Hey friends, Lob helps developers extend their applications into the physical world with automated direct mail delivered through RESTful APIs. Some notable features are sending postcards, letters, and checks as easily as email. You can use customizable HTML templates, verification to ensure deliverability, and autocomplete address forms. Listeners can receive a $20 account credit at lob.com/special-offers/Hansel That's lob.com/special-offers/Hansel or click on the logo below. Hey friends, I'm Scott Hansel, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm talking with Bria Sullivan. She's a CTO and founder of Honeybee Games. They've got games out right now on iOS and Android, including Boba Barista Idol, which my kids are playing. How are you, Bria?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking me to do this.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on the show. So you worked at Google for a number of years, almost 6 years out of New
4
York.
years.
4 years, my bad.
Yeah. Or sorry, 4.5.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so 4 years, almost 5 at Google as a software engineer. You were a program manager at Microsoft. You were an intern at Microsoft. You've been all over the place. You've also done founder assistance. You've kind of acted like CTO for a day and helped 11 different startups get compensation. But you have recently quit your high-paying tech job, and now you're building a game studio, and you're doing it. You're doing the dream. Why did you quit the quote unquote easy money and go for the hard startup life?
It's a very loaded question because I did it for a lot of different reasons, personal and like career reasons. And do you mind if I get into like the personal?
No, I think people want to understand because it's, and I say easy, I'm saying this in air quotes you just have a corporate job and get your W-2 and get your free healthcare and do your thing for 20 or 30 years and retire.
Yeah.
But you're chasing a dream here.
Yeah. It was a lot of different reasons. The first being that I was in New York for a little bit, and I needed to come back to California. Unfortunately, my mom, she had a stroke and lost her ability to walk and speak, and she was also the breadwinner for our family. And so I needed to move back to California and be able to help out with family, be there for her recovery, and I just didn't want to miss out on anything, especially after almost losing her. So that was the first initial push where it's okay, maybe I don't want to be in I can't be in New York anymore. So I started looking for other jobs, maybe even leaving Google, but I started with looking at other jobs within Google. So I also had a business while I was a software engineer. I had a side business helping people get jobs in tech and also helping startups and stuff. So it was a lot of assisting other people with their career dreams. But my cup was empty. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't seek help. I was just trying to help as many people as possible. But I wasn't pouring into myself. And then I also wasn't allowing other people to pour into me. But I was at the edge of I was not ready to help people anymore, even though that is my passion. I had nothing left to give. So I started off just thinking, I need to figure out something else. I need to figure out something for me to do. And at first I was thinking maybe joining a bigger startup like Stripe, getting a job like that, or doing something a little bit more meaningful. I don't know if you've experienced this as in a full-time position, but in the big companies, there are times when you can just do no work for an extended period of time, especially working on something a little bit more bureaucratic, like a more established tool within tech. So I almost felt like I was being wasted. Have you felt that before when with any type of work?
I was trying to explain this to my wife, who is a nurse, and her job is consistently hard all the time. But my job has 3 months of intense 70-hour weeks, and then 3 months of 30-hour weeks. And then you'll find a moment or two where you're just what did I do today? Other than deleting email. So you're not pushing constantly, and then you feel a little guilty, and then you find something specific to do, and then you push again. So it's more of a sine wave. And I
Yeah.
understand that if you were working at, like, I don't know, Home Depot or Little Debbie snack cakes or something that you're doing that's pretty much handled, it's understood, you're in maintenance mode, that it's a much different vibe than the creation of something new.
Yeah. And basically, I started off in ads and working on like ad tools and stuff at Google. And I moved to Google Docs, and everything. I thought that I was going to be able to like do something more fun, something user facing, but that wasn't the case with things that are very established and that so many people use. There's like a ton of different steps to even getting any type of approval. And I'm also was like just drowning in migrations of like, okay, we need to do this new tech stack and keep the tool the same. And yeah, so I just felt like I wasn't being useful, and that's not a good feeling when you feel like you like this is the time of my life to like be useful, and like technology is this thing that you can make anything, and I have this skill to make anything, and I'm doing nothing,
Mm.
except for reading design docs or making design docs for things that aren't going to get approved.
And if I may, when I look at your LinkedIn, when I see your work you're doing on social media, I feel like you and I are actually very similar. Not only are we doing our day jobs and helping our families, but you're also doing startup funds, and you're a tech advisor, and you're volunteering. So, like, even when you were at Google, you volunteered at like 25 plus events. Like, that you don't have to like have three side hustles. Why pour so much out into the world? Is that what caused you to stop and say, I'm giving too much, I need to give back to myself?
Yeah, like my whole reason even staying at Google, it's not like I'm super passionate about Google Docs or making Google the like, a $5 trillion company. My passion was using my privilege of being at Google and helping people get there, or at least like, and even I don't like, my fundamental belief isn't that you shouldn't have to work at a place like that, especially if it doesn't align with your values. It's more that I wanted people to be able to get maybe the money, the salary, or the skill set by working there to be able to go off and do their own thing. So that was like more of my passion and my only reason of being at Google. And like that's why while I was there, I just would go and like I would try to find as many resources as possible at the job and try to like give them to everyone outside of the company. But once I wasn't even motivated by that, it's like I need to do something else. Like I need
Hmm.
to do something that more aligns with my values.
Yeah. During your time at Google, you were doing what my friend Anwan Simmons calls lending your privilege, helping people negotiate, get into the company, bring folks in, teach them the ropes so that they can then, you were sending the ladder back down.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
But in doing that, though, it sounds like there can be a volunteerism burnout where you're giving to everyone but yourself.
Yeah, that's a constant like the sine wave you were talking about with work, like that's the sine wave I have with my like volunteering or with or I guess what I do in the world. It's like just trying to give and give and give, and then um until you have nothing left,
Yeah.
which isn't the best thing to do.
So you moved to LA, you
Mhm,
left Google, I think was it
mhm,
it's September of this year. So we're still in a pandemic and you're leaving this job, but you had already started your game studio while you were at
mhm.
Google. So they kind of had like a side thing going.
My LinkedIn's a little bit out of sync. So I left technically in July of 2020. So that's when I officially left. I started, teaching myself game development in February of 2020. So there wasn't a lot of, I wanted to make sure, and I didn't launch anything until after I left Google because there is, with working at a big company, there's
Mm,
like moonlighting policies and all
smart.
of that. But luckily, those things I had ideas for Boba, like for games and stuff when I first signed my offer, and so I just wrote down that these games already existed just in case. So I got a little like kind of approval, but I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any type of like crossover there.
That's a really good tip for folks that are listening, like making sure that when you take a new offer, when you let your boss know, he's like, I had this idea before, here are emails that prove that I had that idea, so that they're not going to go and take those ideas. So you
Mhm.
kept things nice and clean. and you walk away from Google and you start Honeybee Games. And did you have a game ready to go, or was there a time where you have no money coming in and you have all these games in your brain, and you got to get them out there and you got to get revenue coming in?
I think almost like a year. I had about a year of that. I started working with someone that had a little bit of game experience, so I at least like got my feet wet. Uh, and just like learning about making games, but I think that their approach was very it was just a little bit more outdated, and I had to like take a step back and just start really like making games on my own, and like with like the learnings that I've had from the past like the research that I had done. So I feel like Honeybee Games really started in October of 2020, and that's when I started. I don't know if this is the best decision, but I wrote my own game engine, and I wrote a game engine for an idle game, and that was I started in October, and then I launched in February, and that's when I started to have a little bit of revenue. Not much, but like I started to have a little bit of revenue after that first launch.
Mm-hmm. And so you joke a little bit saying that you maybe shouldn't have written your own engine. Like, you know that there are lots of engines that already exist. What
Yeah.
was it that made you say, I need to do this first? Like, I'm not just going to pick up, because you've done work in Unity. Why write
Mhm.
your own engine? And was that one written in Flutter?
Yeah, so I wrote that one in Flutter. It was partly like a decision. It was what I had been doing with a former business partner, who suggested and said like who suggested to stray away from Unity. But I think so. Looking back, I don't think I would write one again. But I feel like I have a way better understanding of what a game engine is capable of doing for me, and so something that Flutter does. Have you used Flutter before?
I have.
Yeah. So like with set state, how it like basically like rewrites the whole screen. So after I was like looking in Unity, I was like, oh, basically like the update function in Unity is kind of the same thing as set state in Flutter. So I think that being able to connect those two things really helped me have a better understanding of game engines as a whole and what it could do for me. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. So ordinarily when you're drawing to a screen, like if you've ever used something like
Mhm.
Pico 8 or small like pixel games, you're really concentrating on every pixel on the screen. And with set state and Flutter, you can dynamically change the UI by marking widgets dirty. And then when Flutter gets around to building the next frame, it can then reset that widget based on state. So from a game engine perspective, it sounds like it worked out really well for you.
Yeah. I think if I was to do it again or to make that same game in Unity, it would probably take a lot less time for
Mhm.
sure. But I didn't even understand or have a concept in Unity of like, frames and how fast a frame is. And I think working at a big company like a Google or a Microsoft, performance is everything. There's these things that you can't do, like you have to think about anything. Like you can't have any unoptimized anything or at Google or whatever. So I think I was just getting caught up in, I don't know if I can call set state this many times. I don't know if that's going to work. But then seeing that Unity and writing the frame every single time actually isn't that bad in terms of performance. Like it's not going to ruin everything. So that was kind of a shift for me coding wise.
Mhm. One of the analogies that I like to use a lot when I think about coding, or in your case, writing your own game engine, is like you decided to drive stick shift. You could have
Mhm.
just gotten an Uber and gone somewhere and it would have been fine. You would have used someone else's game engine and it would have handled it for you. But you said,
Mhm.
I'm going to go and build this engine from scratch. So you're under the hood, figuring out what's going on. And it sounds like it made you a better game developer. And
Yes.
maybe you wouldn't do it a second time, but you have to build your lightsaber the first try. And then you
Right.
learn a lot.
Yeah.
Time is of the essence when identifying and resolving issues in your software, and our friends at Raygun are here to help. Their brand new alerting feature is now available for crash reporting and real user monitoring, and they'll make sure you're quickly notified of the errors, crashes, and front end performance issues that matter most to you and your business. You can set thresholds for your alert based on an increase in error count, a spike in load time, or new issues introduced in the latest deployment, along with custom filters that give you even greater control. You can assign multiple users to ensure the right team members are notified with alerts linked directly to the issue in Raygun that'll take you to the root cause faster. Never miss another mission-critical issue in your software again. Try Raygun Alerting today and create a world-class issue resolution workflow that gives you and your customers peace of mind. Visit raygun.com to learn more. Their simple usage-based plans start from as little as $4 a month with unlimited apps and users. That's raygun.com, raygun.com, to start your free 14-day trial. So you're a year figuring out healthcare, taking care of your mom, you're back on the West Coast, and you have no revenue. But when you start getting revenue, how do you know that this is something that can happen? Like, if I quit my job tomorrow and I spend a year with no revenue, when do I know to give up? Are there any moments when you're a startup founder and you're like, I'm 6 months in, I need to quit. This is not a thing that's going to happen.
So I saved my money for a while to make sure that I had enough runway. I went into this, and this is a personal decision. I went into this thing like not knowing if I was going to make any money and not really with that expectation of like, I'm going to replace my salary. That would be nice. That's ideal. But I'm really just trying something. So I've had revenue since February of 2021. I can get into numbers if you want me to.
It's totally up to you. I think what I want people to understand is that there are other folks out there are other Brias who are like, I have a game inside me, or a project, or a side thing, or whatever, but we just don't know how to start, right?
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so it's interesting that you say that, because this is something that I've run into with even talking to people about games, talking to other people that want to make games. Specifically for mobile, and if it's your first time, my biggest advice and the thing that I think has helped me the most is to scale everything down and do not spend longer on a game than 4 months. Do not. And cut everything.
Really?
And cut everything. And I got this advice with the very first game that I didn't even monetize, because I had this idea. I have all these grand ideas of what I want this game to be. And this person, and I hadn't launched the game yet. We've been working on it since February. It was July. And so what is that, like 5 months? So after, it was someone who had been working in games for mobile gaming for a really long time. And they were like, you don't know if someone's going to get past level 5. Why are you worried about having 100 levels in your game? You have no idea if people are going to get past level 5 or if people even want to play your game. Like, the real advice is to not spend more than like 2 months on a game, but I'm bad at this. I usually spend about 4, but I will never spend over 6 for sure.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, because or for mobile specifically, you have if you don't know what to expect out of like gameplay and all of that, I feel like I learned the most by launching things when they weren't done yet, because you can add as much as possible. And I have all of these super grand ideas for what I want my games to be. And it's something that I noticed with working with other people is that they were so focused on like how the game ends and what it's going to look like 5 hours into gameplay or 10 days into gameplay. But that's great that they did that. But it's now been 8-10 months and they still don't have anything, and they have no idea if people like their game or not. They have no data on if people like their game or not. And then also, most people, maybe like less than 1% of people are even getting to that 5th hour. So what really matters is the first hour, then the second hour, then the third. So that's one of the biggest advices that I would give for that.
It's so interesting that you say that. I happen to be playing Paper Mario on the Nintendo Switch right now, and you get into a game for a while, and I go online and I search for how long to beat, that website that tells you, is it a 10-hour game or whatever. I was like, it's a cute little game with a little man on Switch, and it says it's a 35-hour game. I'm like, oh my God, this game is so big. And then I got a little sad because I realized that the percentage of people that are going to get to the end game are vanishingly small. Like maybe 5% of the people who buy the game are going to make it all the way to the end. And that made me kind of sad that there's so much work being done into that stuff. So I'm hearing you say that you really need to focus on that loop, the thing that they're going to do the most. Is that fun? Is that satisfying? Do the sounds, do the tactile sense, the button pushing that they're going to do all the time, every few
Yeah.
minutes for the first hour or two, is that interesting,
Hmm.
regardless of what happens 10, 20 hours into
Yeah.
the game?
This is for free to play specifically. Like this is the advice that I would give for free to play. And so free to play is the type of gameplay where people don't have to pay initially for the game, and maybe they'll
Mhm.
watch ads or they'll do in-app purchases eventually. But that's another thing that I learned is that like everyone is trying to get me to monetize all this stuff that I have, add in-app purchases and all of that. But if I'm not gonna focus on a game, if people pay for something, that's when you can actually get into trouble where people are like, this wasn't worth it. There's not enough value here. So there's not enough room for experimentation. So if you do some type of like free game, like I had to learn to not just like throw everything like in-app purchases and all that. Monetization is not the hugest thing in the beginning, for sure.
Interesting. So,
Mhm.
did you decide like this is going to be an idle game, a freemium, and I'm going to buy coins, or I'm going to
Mhm.
do ads? How did you decide? Like, I need to make money. I put the game out for free.
Mhm.
Where does the money come from? Does it come from ads, or does it come from in-app purchases?
As of right now, I only have reward ads. Those are the most valuable ads right now for me. So my biggest game, so Boba's Story that came out on September 29th, September 30th, that game has been really, really great for me. But so the question is, how do I decide? It's honestly like, mm, it really depends on it really depends on the game. I am not sure which of the games that I'm making are the ones I'm going to invest all my effort and time in. I'm still at the phase of trying things
Hmm.
and seeing what's going to stick the most. So,
Well, it sounds like there's a balance, right? Because
yeah.
you have 3 games out right now,
Mhm.
and they're varying levels of complexity.
Mhm.
There's the which one brings the most money, but then there's also which one makes you happy to work on,
Yeah.
and that might not be the same thing.
It might not be, but as of right now though, the one that did make me the happiest in making, the one that's most to me is also the one that's making me the most money right now. So
That's interesting.
I'm feeling pretty good about Boba's Story for sure. I think
Mhm.
we hit 80,000 users today.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's been a little over a month. Yeah.
When you were talking about how being at Google and doing the things that you're doing, being at Microsoft wasn't feeding your spirit. You also needed to take care of family. You had these games in you, so you found your
Mhm.
balance. You moved west. But one of the things that I've always been impressed with you about is you're doing a lot of stuff in public. Like you could have just put your head down and wrote these
Mhm.
games, and then your work product would be the games. But you're on TikTok and you're on Twitter talking about the games. You're showing the development process. You're showing the art creating process. You're asking people for their thoughts and their advice. Is that something that you're doing for the business, or is that something you're doing for yourself?
Mostly for myself. I mean, it's been pretty lonely. I live with my grandparents, and they're a little bit older, and they don't talk very much. So I can go days without talking. I can go days without, even if I'm like texting friends and stuff. I can go days without talking, and like I am a super conversationalist. And I also just like sharing the learning process because, like I said, I've been doing game development since February of 2020. So it's been a year and a half. So it's mostly a thing where people can see where you can get to from like starting. And it's for myself too. It's for myself so I can like look back and like watch my own progress because that's pretty cool. It's like a diary of seeing like before this thing felt so impossible and that I was never going to solve that, but I'm on the other side of it. So that's been like really cool.
That's actually really nice. People ask if I'm doing the podcast or the blog now, going on 20 years for them. But honestly, I'm doing it for myself and being able to
Mhm.
sit back and then look and say, look at all that content and that I created. Look at that diary. I've been writing in
Mhm.
public now for decades, and I can go and Google for stuff and see how I was feeling in
Mhm.
April of 20, 2004. What was I working on? Oh, I don't know. Let me look at the blog. Let me see who I was talking to on the podcast. So I somehow assumed that you were doing your TikToks for business reasons, but it's really an opportunity to interact with people online and also go
Yeah.
back and see how far you've come, because you have a degree from Cal Poly and you've been an engineer for many years, but you've only been doing game dev for 2 years in the middle of a pandemic, and now you have 3 games out and they're making money. That's pretty
Mhm.
freaking awesome.
Thank you. I didn't think that I would be here too. Like when I look back at even the devlogs on TikTok or on Twitter, I didn't know that I would get to where I'm at right now. See, it's very interesting, and also, yeah, seeing the process of even like tweeting through frustration and being like, I don't know how to solve this problem. And then when you look back, and if you are having like a different hard problem, you can look back and be like, oh man, I was able to get over that. I can figure this out. Like, and maybe it's, I need to take a shower, I need to go on a walk, or I need to try the same thing that I did before. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, today it happens to be sunny. And
Mhm.
yesterday it was just awful. I'm here in Oregon and it was not just like regular gray, but it was like mean, where like the weather itself is trying to make me sad. And
Mhm.
then I went out this morning to get the mail and it was like, it was sunny. I was like, oh my goodness. Like someone's trying to give me information here. Like the world is trying to tell me that it's going to be okay. I'm going to go outside after this podcast and get sunshine and absorb that. And then hopefully that will like buoy me into the next week. I'll survive the next week because it was sunny today. So, the analogy there is like when you push past some technical thing, even if you're alone in your house with your grandparents, and you have that thing where you do something and you like lift your arms in the air and you're like, I did it. And then you look around, there's like nobody
Yeah.
to tell. It's like,
Yeah.
I solved it. I solved it. You got to tell somebody. So you tell us on the internet.
Yeah. And it feels good. I mean, like I have a lot of friends that aren't technical or whatever, and sometimes I'll just text them and be like, I just got over a really, really hard problem, like something that I've been trying to solve for like 4 days. And I did it. And they don't know what I'm talking about, but it's nice. But they're very supportive through it.
Yeah.
That was another thing. So have you done any game development?
No, I haven't.
So as an engineer, I've done large scale app design, back ends, front ends, all that stuff, right? Game development has been some of the most challenging technical work that I think I've ever done.
Hmm.
I think.
Why?
It's super object oriented. Like, because everything is an object and you literally have to design it from nothing. Like, you have no reference. Because, like, I feel like even at Google, when I'd have to design like a big, large scale, distributed system, something, there was still a lot of references, seeing like something someone else had done, different designs and stuff to look through. But this is you kind of have to make it up, or you have to like break everything down to like very, very tiny pieces, and figuring out which event belongs to which object has been really interesting, because at first it'll start one place and actually that doesn't make sense. It should go there, using colliders and all of that. It's been really, really difficult, but in a good
Interesting.
way, in like a really challenging way.
The mobile apps, I've done mobile apps since the Palm Pilot, which may
Mm-hmm.
preclude, maybe, I'm not sure how old you are, but it may be a little earlier than you. The original black and white Palm Pilot. Did you ever do any work
Oh,
on that?
I did not, but I remember like those were some of my favorite games that I ever played were on
Yeah, just like
that.
little tiny simple black and white, like it was like the Game
Mhm.
Boy.
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't just the state management of the running of the game; it was the saving the state and then
Mhm.
across versions. So you
Mhm.
save the state on version 1, and then the user upgrades, and then you have to read the older structure off of the disk that represented the state of the game at the
Mhm.
time of version 1.0. And now version 1.2, we've added new kinds of objects. So keeping track of that and not corrupting the user's state and losing all of their stuff would
Mhm.
be really scary to me. And you're doing this on Google, Android, and you're doing it on iPhone. So you're doing
Mhm.
cross-platform, but you're thinking about state. And then what if somebody misses an update? So they go from version
Yeah.
1.0 to 1.2.
Yeah.
You're always thinking about the technical debt of the past, particularly when loading old structures off disk. And then you get
Oh
into
man.
cloud syncing of saves, and that's a
Mhm.
whole other thing.
it's a whole other thing. But I mean, I haven't gotten to that yet because I mean, I have some mentors now. Like I ask the universe for mentorship. I'm like, I need help. I'm ready to accept help. And I have great mentors now. And they're always the ones that are just like, yeah, don't focus on that right now. Like do this, like cloud saving eventually. But they're
Mm.
more just like, do just enough to get data and to like have hopefully like a skew in data and stuff like that. Like don't focus on that kind of stuff. But yeah, state figuring like, you know, serialization and all of that updates has been kind of a nightmare. You know, like adding a completely new feature and making it still fit with the original structure is really interesting.
It seems like the if we can have one piece of advice that, you know, over this entire episode of this podcast that we can give our
Mm-hmm.
listening audience is less scope than you realize. Just make
Mm-hmm.
it simpler. Whatever big plans you have, ship the minimum viable product, and
Yeah.
you're not going to need it. Right? Worry about that stuff later.
I think that people, because I run into this all the time, what I think is a minimum viable product is still way bigger than what the minimum is. Like way, way, way bigger, especially with mobile. If you're in mobile app, game, whatever, something to think about. You can always add it later. You can. Like it's not the end all be all. The launches for mobile are not that important if you're a pretty small. So just always remember you can add it later. It's not it has to be in by this update or by this date. Updates are fine.
Aren't you a perfectionist though? Isn't it hard because you're basically saying to people who are perfectionists, turn off your
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist tendencies
Yeah.
and just ship the thing.
So I was a perfectionist for a very, very long time, and perfectionism will halt you. It will halt you. I think bad feedback is fine. It's not going to kill you, and it'll honestly steer you in a better direction because I think we have all these preconceived notions about what we think our users want or what they need, but they'll tell you, and
Mm-hmm.
the data will speak for itself. So yeah, just analytics and launch way earlier than you think. So
Speaking of bad feedback, and sorry to end on a downer here, but
it's okay. It's
you
good.
got on the front page of TikTok because of a trending. You know, I'm not sure if the hashtag or the sound that you used, but then
Hmm.
you know, once the snowball starts rolling downhill, it gets pretty big. And you had a not just a regular viral TikTok, but like an uber super viral TikTok that was going for weeks. And
Hmm.
then the internet showed up in your comments section and had opinions about a game that they'd never played. You
Yeah.
just said that negative feedback can be really good, but a flood of it
Yeah.
can be very stressful. How did you deal with that?
I mean, I've dealt with like mental health issues for a really long time. I think what really helped me get out of it is to first like turn to gratitude and be really grateful for like what the positive people were saying and what my family was saying and like what people and like recognizing like what is the real truth of the situation. Like if you take a step back, what is the real truth? I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about. I think people project their own insecurities onto people. And so on the video, I literally just said that I left my job at Google to make games about bubble tea.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone thought that was just saying how stupid I was for doing that. And I'm like, well, I left with a decent amount of money. And I don't think people really recognize like what that what that could look like and how much money you can actually save by working at a big company and also like really believing in like the direction that I'm going in. And even though it was a lot of negative comments, I made 10 grand off of how much the people that downloaded my game off of that video.
Wow.
So yeah,
So any press is good press in that context.
in that context, yeah, we're as long as I was completely myself, I wasn't doing anything negative. So I think people are just not going to understand all the time like why you make certain decisions, but I knew. And I just look back and I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I do know what I'm doing. And also they don't know this, but I can always go back to Google. They've asked for me back many times.
That is a really good reminder, and that's a
Yeah.
great thing. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
For sure. Thank you so much for asking me. This is great. This is fun.
Well, you can check out all of Bria's games at bubbleteagame.com. The Boba story is up on the Google Play Store and on the App Store. Boba Barista Idol and Milk Tea Mania are also available, and you can also join her exclusive testers on the link there at bubbleteagame.com. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.